They evacuated us so quickly. I don't even have a picture of her.
You're only gonna be gone for a few days, right? You are gonna come back to me. It's not the end of the world.
Nature has an order, a power to restore balance.
Godzilla. Experience it in IMAX 3D, rated PG-13.
Hello, I'm the Universal Critic. I talk about whatever I want, whenever I want. Last summer, I reviewed the Guillermo del Toro film Pacific Rim. That film was an action romp meant to pay homage to classic monster movies, namely the Godzilla franchise. And while that film was a well-made homage, it was still just a carbon copy of those films. Today I'm reviewing Hollywood's newest attempt to emulate the legit Godzilla, an attempt which I think is an all-around success. This film stars Aaron Taylor Johnson as Lieutenant Ford Brody. When Brody was a child, he and his father, played by Bryan Cranston, lived in Japan where the dad worked at a nuclear power plant. One day, some sort of catastrophe occurred, destroying the plant and flooding the area with radiation, killing many, including Brody's mother. Years later, Brody and his father returned to the site, the latter convinced that something more sinister than a natural disaster destroyed the plant. But they soon discover that the government has been hiding something in this quarantined area, and soon it is unleashed into the world. From then on, the film becomes a race to stop the giant creatures, and the solution to which might come from an unlikely source. Let me start by saying people who are expecting a big, campy destruction fest a la Pacific Rim are gonna be a mite disappointed. This is an action film, yes, but not a light-hearted one. Personally, I actually like this because it's actually much closer to the tone of the original film, Gojira. A lot of people probably don't know this, but the original Godzilla film, or Gojira as I said earlier as it's pronounced in Japan, was a much darker, more serious disaster film with an undercurrent about the dangers of nuclear weapons. This new film has that tone, but updates it by focusing more on nuclear power than nuclear weapons. This is a good update because in the 1950s, particularly in Japan, in the US, but also especially in Japan for obvious reasons, nuclear power seemed to always be hanging over our heads. But now nuclear power is all around us, which arguably makes it more dangerous. The film pays homage to the original, though, by stating that Godzilla was first awakened by nuclear power in 1954, which was the year the very first film was released. Also, a news broadcast in the film calls him the King of the Monsters, a reference to the subtitle of the original film's American release. One thing I sort of questioned was that in this film they say that monsters are prehistoric beasts, not mutations like in the other films. Not sure why they changed that, it's no less implausible, but that's just a nitpick. The action of this film is good, but I think there wasn't quite enough of it. Godzilla only appears in the film for about 15 minutes, max. Most of the film focuses on these other creatures whom Godzilla must fight. Yeah, they made Godzilla an anti-hero in this film, not the antagonist. Not sure if that was the best way to start off this new franchise, and this is probably going to be a franchise, but it's still kind of cool. As for the minimal fighting, I think it kind of works in the way that the film is directed. The events are almost always anchored by the perspective of the main characters, and unlike in most other films like this, they spend most of their time actually running away from the monsters and not standing still like idiots so the audience can see what's going on. I would have liked to see more, like I said earlier, but it's still pretty cool. I actually have pretty little to say about the characters or the acting. The characters aren't bad, just a little standard. The only real standouts for me were Bryan Cranston as the father and Ken Watanabe as the scientist who was chasing after the monsters. Their characters might be a touch cliched, but the actors really managed to sell their vulnerability, adding a healthy dose of humanity to a film full of giant monsters. Overall, I give Godzilla 2014 a high big screen rating for people who want a more serious take on something like this. For those who want camp, I'd say go see Pacific Rim again. But whatever your feelings are about this new film, what this new film is or what it should have been, I think we can all agree it's way better than that Matthew Broderick trainwreck from the 90s. I'm the Universal Critic. I talk about whatever I want, whenever I want. Goodbye.